Actually, on August 14th, which is tomorrow, is the day that Japan surrendered unconditionally to the United States in 1945, which ended World War II. So I think that's a great thing. So thank you all again for being here. I'm going to hand it over to Jerry.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jerry.
Hiya, Jerry.
I want to get started. I'm going to say one or two things first. I'll be introducing the candidates for governor and those who are thinking about it. But first, I want to say something. I'm very happy to see my friend Matt Sikolowski here. In 13 and 14, he and another Republican that we all know, Corey Lewandowski, were working for Americans for Prosperity. Corey went on to manage the Trump campaign, and Matt was the state director for Donald Trump. And that was a great campaign. We came very close. We had a lot of New Hampshire natives on that. So I'd like to, let's welcome Matt back to New Hampshire. And thank you, Mr. Elder, for choosing a New Hampshire guy to run your national campaign. Thank you, sir. Isn't this a great day in Cheshire County? You know, when you work with a lot of these national campaigns, and they've never really been here, they always talk about the importance of making sure you go to Hillsborough and Rockingham and Senator down in Salem. Well, I want to put a word in for Cheshire County and the West. We punch above our weight in this county, and yes, there are more Democrats than there are Republicans here. But I'll just say this to you. Let's say you're running a competitive race in one of these so-called Republican counties, but you spent some time here. You've got some quality staff representing you here. It could be the difference between winning and losing. So that's my message to you guys. The West is the best. The first person I'd like to bring up is somebody that I admire very much. This guy has like a Midas touch. He was working as an accountant, decided to go out on his own and become an angel investor, and that worked out for him. Well, I want to say a word about his character, as I know it. He ran a competitive race in 2016 and barely lost to our current governor. What kind of guy do you have to be when the guy that you ran against taps you on, and he won? You know, it was a competitive contest, just like this one's going to be. It wasn't nasty. It was competitive. What kind of character do you have to have?
Who were you talking about? We can't pick it up.
I'm kidding you, sir. I'm kidding you. When you come in second in that race, and he taps you on the shoulder and says, "Come with me. Let's fix education in the state." And I believe that's just what he's done and has been doing. He's in a little trouble lately because people are upset that he thinks it's a good idea that teenagers should be able to balance their checkbook. Commissioner Frank, over here. 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. What a lovely day. Isn't it kind of awesome that the rain, I don't know about you all, but when I was coming here, it was raining for a little bit.
That was holy water.
That was holy water. Okay, we've all been baptized. Is that what it is? Okay, so this must be a sprinkling crowd. Is that what we're doing? Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for letting me join you as the Commissioner of Education. I want to talk to you a little bit about education and some of the headwinds that the educational establishment is facing. Because these headwinds are real and they're affecting our ability to make sure that our children get the best possible education, and it is affecting more broadly our state. So the first headwind we get that many people are not aware of is what I refer to as demographics. And what I mean by demographics is New Hampshire peaked in 2002 in terms of the number of students in the education system. In 2002, we had 207,000 students in the education system. Today, we have 46,000 fewer students in the education system. Imagine that. We're at 161,000. And the thing is, that trend is not going to change. It's not because we lost the kids. Just to be clear, we're very responsible up there at the Department of Education. But What it is just the demographics. You know, younger people are not getting married as early, they're not having as many children, and so this is expected to continue at least for the next decade or 13 or 15 years, and who knows what will happen beyond that, because the forecasts get weaker and weaker the further out they go. But you can imagine that if you are 46,000 fewer students, that really affects that institution and that institution's ability to function. But that also, the demographic shift comes with what I refer to as the twin sibling. And that is the cost of education. Because as the number of students is coming down, you can imagine the cost per pupil is coming up. Because it's very difficult to adjust that cost. Is there anybody in here who imagines that the NEA, that your local collective bargaining unit, will ever propose a lower school budget? Is there anybody who's laying under that delusion? Right? It's just not going to happen. Do not expect it to happen. And so you've got this demographic shift. You know, we may be out of kids and there'll be one child in there, but they're still going to be proposing these budgets that everybody's going to be scratching their head. Do you know that we have one district in the state of New Hampshire that's paying over $50,000 a child to educate their students? Right, and so I call these headwinds, right? Because the demographics are, we're running out of kids. You know, the costs are going to get to a certain point, and it's going to be very difficult to manage that system because of the burden on the people who are trying to pay for that system. And we have another shift, another headwind, or it's not demographic, but another headwind that we're facing, and that is the outcomes that we are getting. And those outcomes are basically flat, right? We've seen, but flat for decades. You know, you just saw the numbers kind of bouncing around a little bit, maybe a slight increase. I serve on an organization called the National Assessment Governing Board. We administer an assessment called the NAEP test, and it is basically considered the nation's report card. Over this last year, we have seen really dismal news coming out relative to those assessments, that not only have we been flat for decades, but then we started a decline in 2012, and then as a result of COVID, we saw an even further decline. And really what's happening in that decline is it's not enough to just say the numbers are kind of bouncing around for decades, and in 2012 we see a downward decline, then in COVID we see a further decline. But what happens is if you pull those numbers apart, you see a startling trend really taking place. How many people believe or have heard the statement that says, you know, the education is supposed to be the great equalizer? Anybody ever hear that education is the great equalizer, right? Yeah. Turns out it's actually the great divider, because what you'll find is in those results, when they're going along, the top performing students, or the top quartile, is doing okay, maybe even a little bit of growth. But the bottom quartile, the bottom 10% of students, they're not engaged, they're falling apart. And so we are actually creating a divide in this nation of those who actually are successful in education and those that are not successful in education. And then the fourth headwind that is really facing us is, it was already pre-existent, but COVID manifested it to so many of us. And this is what I often like to refer as the content headwind or the transparency headwind. And essentially what happened in COVID is all of a sudden many parents had a window into what was happening in their school. And they saw the actual lessons that were taking place. And they really had kind of two reactions to that. Number one is that you'll see that they were not happy about some of the content in the schools. And you hear about this, you know, publicly and social media and stuff like that. They're like, wait, what are you teaching them? I thought you were teaching them math. Like, what is this over here? But then the other thing that they also observed is many of the parents who were working side by side with these children were saying to themselves, is that all you did all day? Like, is that what a full school day actually looks like to me? And so you have really this very strong, push relative to the content and transparency. I like to say what we really need to do is to put parents back in transparency. Okay, can we do that? And that is what we have been doing at the Department of Education, is putting parents back into transparency. Now, in order to face these headwinds, you're not going to be able to just have a bureaucratic approach, right? You got to believe that there were really smart people for many, many years, decades, trying to manage this system, and they tried all kinds of really good things. So we need to really be thinking outside of the box. We need to be innovative in terms of what it is that we're doing, and that is what we have been bringing at the Department of Education. We've got programs like, how many of you guys are familiar with our charter school programs in the state? We've got a few charter schools, right? So we got a $46 million federal grant to do that. It took me a year to get it out of the Democrat legislature because they just said no for an entire year. I actually began to get to the point where every month they said, I'll be back and I'll ask again and I'll bring some more students so we can get that done. But we got it out there. We're setting up charter schools that meet the unique needs of kids, because not all kids are the same. So we've got Lionheart over in this area that is, classical education. We've got, the other day I had an application from a school that's working on their application. It's an outdoor school. They said, we're going to do school completely outdoor. Yes. I said to them, what are you going to do in the wintertime? Like, do you have yurts or something like that? I don't know. We'll wait and we see the final application. But again, just finding something that connects to the students. So we've got charter schools. We've got micro schools and learning pods in the state of New Hampshire. Tried so hard to help the schools integrate these into their own curriculum. But again, many of the collective bargaining units just put up a big wall and said, not interested, not for sale here. We're going to keep doing what we've always been doing. Then we've got our Learn Everywhere program, which is my actual favorite program of everything, which basically allows students to get credit for learning that takes place outside of the classroom, right? Because there's not a monopoly on learning. Kids are learning all the time, so why would we monopolize it and say, no, only learning that counts between happens between 7:30 and 2:30 in a specific location is the learning that counts. We think learning happens all over, and we're going to give credit to everyone for doing that. In fact, just this last week, we brought a program forward from PragerU on financial literacy. I mean, who wouldn't want kids to know to be cautious about things like, student debt and how to manage, to your point, Jerry, how to manage your checkbook and stuff like that. But one of the quotes, I thought it was actually kind of an interesting quote that they had about it. I mean, in the PragerU content, they're only one click away from knowing what a constitutional republic is. Oh my God, we can't possibly have that, right? So, Learn Everywhere is another innovative program that we have here in the state of New Hampshire. And then what I think is really the cherry on top of this ice cream sundae, and that is our educational freedom accounts. So, if you got legislators in this thing, yes, exactly. The funds follow the children. And as we begin to introduce all of these innovations in education, right, they are available to our traditional public schools. They can grab hold of them, they can use them, and so we have to bring these tools in a way to them that they can say, like, oh, we can do this too. And maybe what will happen is we'll begin to see some flexibility and some transformation. And I'm getting the hook, but thank you so much for letting me join you today.
This next one is kind of special to me. It was this time last year when we were all here, a man who, in my opinion, should have been in the United States Senate right now, was here talking to us. I want you to think, as conservatives, I want you to think about some of the things that you like in this state, some of the laws. How about constitutional carry? Chuck Morris. How about the fact that if you have a business, you've seen your taxes reduced, or if you're living on your interest and dividends, we're seeing the phase out of that. Chuck Morris. There's only one state in New England that has any kind of laws restricting abortions, and in this state, it's restricted as it should be, and we should not be afraid to defend life in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month. That's not radical.
No-brainer.
There's a reason, folks, why he was the longest-serving president of the New Hampshire Senate in our state's history. Let's welcome the man from Salem, Chuck Morris.
Well, I want to thank the Cheshire County Republicans, and you don't know what you saved me from. My hometown invited me to go over today to a big event they have over there. And they wanted me on the dunk tank, and I don't think it was but I thank you for inviting me over here. I really do think New Hampshire stands in one of the greatest positions in the country. We're the envy of the Northeast by our economy. Everyone wants to live here. That is not by accident. That is truly not luck. That's us. We're electing conservatives to run the government in the state of New Hampshire. I did that as Senate President, and I want to continue to do that. You know, I worked with Governor Sununu to make sure that we created this pro-jobs, pro-growth, you know, pro-family environment here in the state of New Hampshire. We have the best state for return on investment, lowest unemployment rate in the country. New Hampshire is doing fantastic. It's all because we elect conservatives in New Hampshire. You know, when I grew up in New Hampshire, I grew up with a dad that was almost 100% deaf. That dad was a veteran, and his marriage with my mom didn't last too long. It was pretty obvious, it was difficult. But that mom gave me the values that I have today. She believed in hard work. She believed in us being involved in the community. She made sure that all of that happened. You know, when I grew up, I decided I was going to give back. I was going to get that education. I was going to pay for it and make it work. And I did that. And I built a nursery. When I first built it 35 years ago this year, I built it on 3 acres. 3 acres with a pile of dirt and a pile of debt. But you know, it goes and gets better from there. I married the love of my life, Susan. We have a beautiful daughter, Emma, that just got married in June. And we built that nursery right now to over 13 acres and 50 employees, and it's a huge success story. That's the New Hampshire advantage. That's what we want to keep going in this state. You know, when I built my last budget with the legislature in 2021, the first thing we did was send $500 million back to you, the taxpayers. It's your money. We sent it back to you. But along with that, we made sure that we cut those business taxes for small business people. We made sure we reduced interest and dividends tax, and we're going to phase it out because it's a responsible thing for Republicans to do. But don't think those challenges don't exist still in the legislature. This year alone, that legislature is so split that when we had one day in the legislature voting on parental rights, we failed. We failed as Republicans because the Democrats ran the House that day. That can't happen. With all the great things we've done, I mean, Jerry listed off the list. You know, when you talk about what I've passed and what I've worked with people on cutting business taxes and constitutional carry, I mean, we worked with Governor Sununu on education. The first thing he wanted to do, toughest thing to go and talk to Republicans about, he wanted full-day kindergarten. We got it passed because he believed Republicans should lead. Then we started education freedom accounts that we passed. We worked with the Speaker to make sure the House at that point in time didn't want to pass it. We put it in the Senate budget, we got it through. And the legislature this time made it even better. My strong belief is we go back and we grow education freedom accounts so everyone has an opportunity. You know, when we talk about charter schools, it was in early 2000s when we as Republicans were working with Democrats. We were so successful with charter schools, and you're proving that right now. We made it all happen, and where'd the Democrats go? They ran with the unions. And we're creating choice for parents right now. It's working here in New Hampshire. We have to keep doing that. I think it's really the way to go. We can't be like Manchester, New Hampshire. Crime's growing, homelessness is growing, drugs are growing. That's not what we want in the state of New Hampshire. We want a state of New Hampshire that's going to create opportunities. We want to continue to cut taxes. We want to grow educational choice. Those are all things that I want to be your governor and fight for. So I ask you to go to chuckmorse4nh.com. I'd love to get you to sign up for this campaign. It's really, we need to keep New Hampshire going. Thank you.
Look who we have. I mean, they have this Cindy Warmington and somebody named Joyce. Can I start over? Oh yeah, Craig. If you saw close up, you get it.
Batteries down.
Well, our last candidate is somebody that's very well known across the state. Someone who, I made this kind of analogy to do it with Kelly. How good do you have to be appointed a governor, or to be appointed attorney general in your own, by the governor of your own party, And in these highly partisan times, and they've been partisan for a long time, the Governor Lynch, who was a Democrat, asked her to stay. And then she went on from that to become a really good U.S. Senator. And now she's the chairman of the board of one of the largest companies in the United States. When she got that appointment, I called her to congratulate her and say, Kelly, you know, you, as chairman of the board, you've had that distinction now with Frank Sinatra. You create a lot of excitement. You come out of the gate really strong, Kelly. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. People have a sense that there's another chapter in your book that there's more destiny that you have yet to be fulfilled. And my friend, they're seeing greatness. Come on up and talk to us, Kelly.
First of all, Jerry, thank you for being a great patriot. Thank you for serving our country. And for being such a wonderful Republican activist. I mean, Jerry's involved in everything, so I think I speak for all of us. You're awesome. Thank you. So, Cheshire County, I am running for governor, getting off the sidelines to make sure that New Hampshire remains safe, prosperous, and free. And this is what this race is about because, you know, you may have seen, Jerry was right, I did cause a little stir when I got in this race because I said something I believe to be true. I'm running for governor because I am worried that we are one election away from becoming Massachusetts. And let me tell you why. Because we don't have a Republican in that corner office. Do you know how much damage the Democrats can do in just one election cycle? So make no mistake, no matter what we do here, we have to win. We cannot afford to lose. Like many of you in this room, you know, I was born here, I raised here, Joe and I are raising our children here, and I am going to die here. You know why? Because I love this state, I love its people, and you know what? We are different. We are different from our neighbors, and I believe that our differences and who we are, our live free or die values, they are worth fighting for. That's right. But make no mistake, this is going to be a fight. The Democrats, they smell blood in the water, right? With Governor Sununu deciding not to run again. That's why when I said we're one election away from becoming Massachusetts, you may have seen the liberal pundits in Massachusetts lost their minds. I'm sorry, but I'm always going to stand up for the people of New Hampshire, and I do not care what the liberals in Massachusetts or anyone else think, because this state is so important. When you think about making sure that this state remains the best place to live and the best place to raise a family, I know I've been blessed to raise my children here. When I think about keeping our state safe, that means we don't allow New Hampshire to become like Manchester. We're going to hold the drug dealers and the fentanyl dealers accountable. I did that when I was Attorney General, and I will do that as governor. And we need to make sure that we remain safe and we remain prosperous. What does that mean? We have an economic advantage that's so important in this state. We all know what it is. It goes beyond no income or no sales tax. You know, getting rid of the interest and dividends tax, no estate taxes, reducing our business taxes. And as governor, I'm going to look for other ways to reduce taxes on the people of New Hampshire, because that's how we're different and we need to remain that way. And when it comes to government, I don't know, you probably have all had this experience, and I know we have so many state legislators in the room that have worked really hard on this. But there's a lot more work to do in terms of having our government work for the people instead of reverse. There's still too much bureaucracy, there's still too much difficulty, there's still too much government entanglement in our lives. And so, as governor, yeah, I'm going to look to streamline things even more. And I want to work with all the legislators in this room to do that. Great ideas that you have. And finally, freedom. What's freedom? It's called constitutional rights. You know, I love when my friends in Massachusetts, the liberals that came after me, they're so offended that we have Second Amendment rights in the state. They're so offended that we have constitutional carry. Well, as governor, I'm going to defend your constitutional rights. And that, to me, is part of the difference of being in New Hampshire and being a resident of this state versus all of our neighbors. Now, you may have also seen that the liberals got really mad at me. In fact, they called me racist because I said we have drugs that are being trafficked over the southern border, and they're trafficked fentanyl to cities like Lowell and Lawrence, and they're coming up into our state and killing our people. Guess what? That's the truth. Go ask our police. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. But I'm not afraid of being called names by people. I've been called names so many times over the years, you know, in my prior jobs and everything that I've done. What matters to me is one thing, and that is making sure that New Hampshire remains the beacon of freedom in New England. And the only way we can do that is to win this election. So I'm asking you, please join me on this journey, and we will beat the Democrats. I incense them, it's fun. And we are going to win this election and make sure that New Hampshire remains the fantastic state that it is, and that we protect and strengthen our live free or die values. So thank you. It's Kelly for NewHampshire.com. Kelly, F-O-R, NewHampshire.com.
All right, our next candidate is running for Congress. She was actually born in communist China. She knows exactly what it's like to have the government run every aspect of your life, to be indoctrinated by schools, and has a wonderful story to tell. And I also hear she's a fantastic poker player. Lily Tang Williams.
Well, thank you. I have to give up poker because the politics is a lot more important right now than my hobby, right? So thank you for having me back, everybody. I did not win last year, but I finished strong, top, 3 candidates, 25%, with very little money. And I never left. I continue publish open, testify to support parental rights, and organize our Aging American coalitions, and interviews and traveling around the country to speak my stories. I was just in DC, and as a speaker for Victim of Communism Memorial Foundation to train middle school teachers and high school teachers. I will be featured in Florida Department of Education about oral history project of communism, so millions of kids in Florida can watch my videos. I hope I can do that in New Hampshire too, but school sometimes they don't like me, So as I said that, thank you if you donate to me, if you support me, and volunteer for me, I really appreciate it. But I'm not a quitter, because of my dream, American dream, I see that it's under attack. I came to this country in 1988. I thought I'd come to a constitutional republic. I would be good forever, just focus on freedom, prosperity, and have a rule of law to protect my natural rights. But it's not that case anymore. I have seen enough, especially in the last 3 years, what's happening to our country. And I think this time, I want you to be open-minded, give me the second look. If you did not vote for me last time, did not support me, and check me out, LilyTangWilliams.com. If you want somebody who's most effective to take Ancaster out, and debate all those progressive caucus members in the U.S. floor of Congress, who is the best person to call out their socialist government policies, and it will bring us into misery. And all our kids now, a high percentage of them, would rather not to vote, but not give up their TikTok. They're all being brainwashed by the digital fentanyl on our kids' phones. And of course, they don't know what is the difference between socialism, communism, and they don't like capitalism. Are you kidding me? Do they want to be starved like I was? And do they want to lose every they have